Good morning, people. Now, while I understand that this issue here that we're discussing is relatively weighty, I think it's a lot easier to find common ground on it than you might suspect because the basic concerns here are very human. And um, I would think that a lot of people, if they could get over their preconceptions and semantic reactions, I think it's quite easy to find common ground here. In fact, often it's easy to find common ground with people in general if you can just have a an honest conversation about things. I remember a time that a friend of mine and we were out of college and we got into kind of long distance trekking kind of big way. We were one summer taking a backpacking trip paralleling the Canadian border from the Continental Divide in Montana to the Washington coast. And coming across the Idaho Panhandle, we're dropping down into northeast Washington state into a couple little towns. There's Medellin and Medellin Falls. I think that's the area where they filmed that dumb old movie, The Postman, or something like that. Anyway, it was a pretty small burb when we were there, one horse kind of town. Post office, which is why we were there, and there was a gas station because we needed gasoline for the Coleman stove. Gas station was closed on the weekend, and so we decided we'd just camp in the park there and wait for it to open Monday. Monday morning, the guy comes in, roaring into the gas station, opens up the gas station. You know, fatigues, handlebar, mustache, the whole gambit. We're like, okay, well, whatever. That's part of this country here. And we walk across the street, and the guy's giving us just complete and obvious hostile stink eye, right? And we're like, good morning, sir. We'd like to buy some gasoline from you. As the gas station opens? And he looks at us and kind of glares and says, well, that depends. And we're like, oh no. Like, what's up? I mean, if he wasn't going to sell us gas for some reason, it's like a 3-day walk to go get it from here. So I was like, what are we getting ourselves into? Well, anyway, I'm saying, oh, well, I'm sorry. Do you need more time to open, or what's going on here? And he says, no, it has nothing to do with whether I'm open or not. It's just, I'm wondering if you boys are communists. And if you're communists, I won't serve you gasoline. And I'm like, are you serious, man? Are you serious? So, like, the urgency of the situation lent itself to the clever creation of baloney, let's just say, politely. And I thought, what am I going to do to convince this guy that we are not communists? So I said, oh, well, I mean, we're not communists, but, like, I mean, it's not like I really have a big problem with communists anyway. In fact, when we came in here, we kind of thought you were communist and we were going to buy your gasoline anyway. And he looks at us and it's like, now, why is it that you would think that I was a communist? And I point over to, the garage over there, the gas station, and there's a big sign there that says Castrol on it. And I said, well, I mean, if you're just advocating for Cuban oil, I thought that you were probably a supporter of Fidel Castro. And I mean, you got the fatigues, and he wore the fatigues, and I just assumed that's kind of where you were going, but it wasn't that big a deal. And he's like, looking at me and looking at the sign, he says, well, I didn't know that Castro came from Cuba. And it's like, well, I mean, like, where would you think it would come from? Arkansas? And it's like, I like castor oil. I mean, I use it in chainsaws and stuff. It's totally fine. It's a good product. But, I mean, I just assumed that if you were advocating for it, it was something that you valued as opposed to, Pennzoil or something else. Because, Pennzoil's from Pennsylvania. And he just sits there, kind of stares, long drag on the cigarette. He says, well, I guess I can sell you boys some gasoline. Would you like a cup of coffee? So at the fundamental core of what we're discussing here when we're talking about adopting neo-indigenous lifestyles or embracing neo-indigenous values is this. You have discovered or rediscovered your respect for life. And when I mean life as a noun, as something that has an independent, objective existence, something that your life is a part of. Now, this doesn't mean that valuing life as a verb is necessarily a bad thing. It is not. In fact, I think it's quite unlikely that anyone who had very little sense of value of their own life would have much of a sense of value for anything, right? So, sure, it's important to hold your own personal life in high regard, but the next step is respecting life as a noun, understanding that if you enjoy your own existence, it's dependent on something else, and that something else needs to be absolutely as important to you as your own existence within it, because without it, there is no you. Now, how does that seem difficult or contrarian or even controversial, right? But if you look at how people behave in a modern civilizational environment, clearly when their choices are made, especially consumer choices, it's obvious, knowable, measurable that factors that might include valuing life are extremely low on the list of importance. And other concerns are much, much, much higher on that list of importance, if not valuing life being practically dead last, right? And we should ask ourselves why, and why does that make any sense? That the absolute most fundamental important thing involved in anybody's choice, that gives you the um, privilege of existing, that should be so completely unrepresented. And then trivial things, so much elevated. Why would be that the case? In spite of the fact that we can explain that it's insane, clearly insane, why is it that we would repeatedly choose otherwise? What has gotten broken in our minds so that we don't think about that which is just fundamental to our own existence? Why don't we hold those things in the forefront of our mind? Why are they so distal as to be almost absent? I don't think it takes very long to discover that answer either. It's that you were taught to not value life through people who stuffed ideology down your throat, who were broken themselves and had learned to hurt and hate themselves and hurt and hate as a response to some kind of trauma and taught you their methodology. Or perhaps you learned that strategy yourself organically. And it's just about impossible to evade it because our entire civilizational project involves hurting, hating, exploitation, plundering. That's where the resources come from to maintain our standard of living, our quality of life. We all know this. Here's the trauma. It's not any surprise at all when you look at it in that manner that we are, in fact, disconnected from the most important thing. Because that's a classic way to avoid the psychic pain of acknowledging that you're injuring something that you fundamentally care very much about. And being not brave or confident or strong enough to confront the reality of our actions, we simply disassociate. Even though, if you sit down and just plainly explain what the sensible thing is, and we might even nod our heads, the disassociation there makes us think, well, I guess I just don't care about it very much. No, you don't. But you do, in fact, still care. And if you do still care about anything, that function of caring still lives. And with a little prompting, it can be brought back into connection with the things that you ought to be caring about rather than the things that are of low value to care about. I mean, that's where the practical stuff comes in. And the fact is, any of us are going to feel so much happier, healthier, and connected to reality if the kinds of things that we consciously choose to care about are aligned with the things that we unconsciously need to care about. And that unconscious part of you that has been human for 40 million years cares about the stuff that makes your life necessary. And no matter whether or not you want to distract yourself with what the rims on your big pickup truck look like, or, you know, how shiny the chrome is on your motor, or who knows what, the kinds of stuff that guys I know waste their time worrying about while they're prancing around talking about how they don't care about things because somebody told them that that's how you're manly, I guess, by not caring. What a stupid thing that is. But I mean, they're obviously eager to care, extremely eager to care about things. Again, whether it's the rims on your car or it's the chrome in the motor or whether your neighbor might be a communist or not. You're driven to worry about crap like that when your intuitive need to care about stuff that actually matters, if that function's been broken and you feel the urge to give a damn, but you don't know how, and you've been told that you cannot give it to the things that matter most because somehow, who knows what, you'll offend the king or something. But really, what you will encounter is just a massive amount of pain that you will need to make reconciliation with, and ways of living your life that will have to change so that you can then live in a manner that is harmonious with the life that makes your life possible. And if you do that, everything really starts to fall in place. Cheers, people.